The new cleaner froze when she saw the millionaire's daughter looking just like her in her childhood photo. The rain hammered against the windows of Bennett Mansion like it was trying to get in. Hannah Carter stood at the base of the marble staircase, bucket in hand, and couldn't help but stare. She'd cleaned plenty of houses before, nice ones even, but nothing like this. This place was something else entirely. At 23, Hannah had learned not to get starstruck by wealth. Rich people's messes were the same as everyone else's, just in fancier rooms. But there was something about this house that made her chest feel tight. Something she couldn't quite put her finger on. "You'll start with the main hall," Mrs. Morrison, the head housekeeper, had told her earlier. The older woman's voice was clipped, professional. "Mr. Bennett is very particular about this area. The portrait must be dusted daily." "Daily? Don't forget," Hannah hadn't asked. Which portrait now, climbing the first few steps with her cleaning supplies? She understood. It dominated the entire wall at the landing, a massive oil painting in an ornate gold frame. A little girl, maybe 5 years old, sat on a velvet chair in a white dress that probably cost more than Hannah made in a month. The kid had this shy little smile, like she wasn't quite sure she was supposed to be there. Dark, almond-shaped eyes, a tiny beauty mark just beside her lip. Hannah's hands went numb. The bucket slipped from her fingers and hit the marble with a dull thud. Water sloshed over the edge, but she barely noticed. It was like looking into a mirror that showed her 20 years ago, in a life she'd never lived. The same eyes, the same curve to the smile, even that stupid little beauty mark in the exact same spot. "What the hell?" Hannah whispered, her voice swallowed by the enormous space. Her heart was pounding now, that weird flutter she got sometimes when she tried too hard to remember anything before the orphanage. Before waking up in that gray building with a nurse telling her, "Your name is Hannah. You're safe now." She'd been 6 years old, no last name, no memory of anything before, just empty. The tears came before she could stop them, hot and angry and confusing. Why was she crying over some rich kid's portrait? She didn't even know this family, but her hands were shaking as she wiped her face with the back of her sleeve. "Are you okay?" Hannah spun around. A little girl stood a few steps below her, head tilted, blonde curls bouncing. She couldn't have been more than 8 or 9. Big blue eyes, curious but kind. "I'm fine, sweetie," Hannah managed, forcing a smile. "Just got something in my eye." The girl climbed up to stand beside her, barely reaching Hannah's shoulder. She looked at the spilled water, then at Hannah's face, then at the portrait. "That's Emily," the girl said quietly. "My sister. Well, my half-sister. She disappeared a long time ago." Hannah's throat went dry. "Disappeared?" "Uh-huh. Before I was born, Daddy says bad people took her." The girl's voice dropped to a whisper, like she was sharing a secret. "Mommy says we're not supposed to talk about it because it makes Daddy sad. But I think about her sometimes. I wish I could have met her." "I'm sure she was. I'm sure she is a great kid," Hannah said, not knowing why she changed the tense. The little girl studied her for a long moment. "Why are your eyes so sad?" Hannah blinked. "What? Your eyes? They look sad. Like Daddy's. Kids. They saw right through everything, didn't they? Sometimes people are just born that way, I guess," Hannah said softly. The girl reached out and took her hand. Her small fingers were warm. "I'm Lily Bennett. Hannah Carter. Are you the new cleaning lady?" "Yep, that's me." "Good." Lily squeezed her hand. "The last one was mean. She told me to stop asking questions." Hannah couldn't help but smile for real this time. "Well, you can ask me whatever you want." "Really? Really?" Lily beamed. Then, glancing back at the portrait, she said, "Do you think Emily's still alive somewhere?" The question hit Hannah like a punch to the gut. That flutter in her chest again. That emptiness where memories should be. "I don't know, sweetie," she whispered. "But I hope so." "Me too." Lily let go of her hand and started skipping down the stairs. "Daddy's in his office if you need anything, but don't bother him too much. He's always working." And just like that, she was gone, leaving Hannah alone with the portrait and the rain and the strange, suffocating feeling that she'd just walked into something much bigger than a cleaning job. The rest of the day passed in a blur. Hannah moved through the mansion like a ghost, dusting furniture that probably cost more than a car, mopping floors so polished she could see her reflection. But her mind kept drifting back to that portrait, to those eyes that looked exactly like hers. By the time Mrs. Morrison dismissed her for the evening, Hannah's head was pounding. She changed out of her work uniform in the staff bathroom and headed for the side exit, pulling her jacket tight against the rain. "Miss Carter." The voice stopped her cold. A man stood in the hallway, tall, maybe late 40s, with graying hair and the kind of face that had once been handsome, but now just looked tired. His eyes were shadowed, his shoulders slightly hunched, like he was carrying something too heavy to put down. Thomas Bennett. She recognized him from the photos Mrs. Morrison had shown her during the interview. "Yes, sir," Hannah said, suddenly very aware that she was dripping rainwater onto his expensive floor. He didn't seem to notice. He was staring at her, not in a creepy way, more like he'd seen a ghost. "I'm sorry," he said finally, his voice rough. You remind me of someone." Hannah's heart skipped. The portrait. His eyes widened. "You saw it. Hard to miss." She tried to keep her tone light. "Professional. Your daughter was beautiful." "Is," he corrected sharply. Then softer. "Is beautiful. I have to believe that." The pain in his voice was so raw that Hannah felt it in her own chest. "I'm sorry," she said. "I didn't mean. It's all right." He rubbed his face with one hand. "It's been 18 years. You'd think I'd be used to it by now." 18 years. Hannah would have been 5, the same age as Emily in the portrait, the same age as the little girl with the shy smile and the beauty mark and the almond-shaped eyes that looked exactly like Hannah's. "Lily mentioned she was taken," Hannah said carefully. Thomas's jaw tightened. "Kidnapped from our front yard. We never found a trace." His gaze locked on hers again, searching. "Forgive me for staring. It's just, you have her eyes." Hannah's breath caught. "I should go," she said quickly, too quickly. "It's late." But as she turned to leave, Thomas called out, "Miss Carter?" She looked back. "Do you believe in second chances?" he asked. Hannah thought about waking up in that orphanage with no name and no past. She thought about the years spent wondering who she was, where she came from, why no one ever came looking for her. "I want to," she said honestly. Something flickered in Thomas Bennett's tired eyes. Hope, maybe, or just more pain. "So do I," he whispered. Hannah walked out into the rain, but she couldn't shake the feeling that she was leaving part of herself behind in that mansion, with a portrait of a girl who looked exactly like her, and a father who still believed in miracles. Hannah didn't sleep that night. She lay in her tiny studio apartment, staring at the water-stained ceiling, watching shadows from passing cars slide across the plaster. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw that portrait, those almond-shaped eyes staring back at her like they were trying to tell her something. "You have her eyes." Thomas Bennett's words echoed in her head, over and over until she wanted to scream. It was just a coincidence. Had to be. Plenty of people looked alike. The world was full of doppelgangers, right? She'd read about that somewhere. But the beauty mark, the exact same spot, and something else, something she couldn't explain. That feeling when she'd stood in front of the portrait, like recognition, like remembering something that had never happened. By the time her alarm went off at 6, Hannah had maybe slept an hour. She dragged herself out of bed, showered, and caught the bus back to Bennett Mansion with her eyes burning and her hands shaking from too much coffee. Mrs. Morrison met her at the staff entrance, already looking disapproving. "You'll be working the second floor today," the housekeeper said briskly. "Mr. Bennett's study needs a thorough cleaning. He's requested someone trustworthy." Hannah nodded, not trusting herself to speak. The study was on the east wing, Mrs. Morrison explained, and Mr. Bennett would be out at meetings all morning. Hannah was to dust, vacuum, and not touch anything on the desk. Everything else was fair game. "Understood?" "Yes, ma'am." The study turned out to be exactly what Hannah expected. All dark wood and leather, floor-to-ceiling bookshelves, and that particular smell of old money. A massive mahogany desk sat in front of a bay window overlooking the gardens. Rain still drizzled outside, making everything look gray and sad. Hannah started with the bookshelves, running her duster over spines that probably hadn't been touched in years. Legal texts, business journals, a whole section on missing persons and cold cases that made her stomach twist. She was halfway through the room when she noticed the cabinet in the corner. Old, ornate, slightly out of place among the modern furniture. The kind of thing people kept important stuff in. "Don't touch anything, Mrs. Morrison had said. But she'd meant the desk, right? Hannah hesitated, dustcloth in hand, then walked over. The cabinet door was unlocked. Inside, tucked between files and folders, was a wooden box. Cedar by the smell, worn smooth with age. Her fingers brushed the lid before her brain caught up with her hands. "Stop. Put it back. This is none of your business." But she was already lifting it out, already setting it on the side table, already opening it. The first thing she saw was the photograph. A little girl in a white dress, the same one from the portrait. But this was a candid shot, not posed. Emily was laughing. Her whole face lit up, reaching for someone just outside the frame. On the back, in faded ink, Emily Grace Bennett, 5 years old, my angel. Hannah's hands started trembling. Beneath the photo were letters, dozens of them, written in a woman's handwriting. "My dearest Emily, when you're old enough to understand, Mommy loves you more than all the stars." Letters from a mother to a daughter who'd never gotten to read them. And at the bottom of the box, wrapped in tissue paper, was a pendant, silver, delicate, with a single letter engraved on it. A. The moment Hannah's fingers touched the metal, the world shifted. "My princess." The voice came from everywhere and nowhere. Warm, deep, safe, strong arms lifting her up, the smell of cologne and something else. Sawdust, workshop smell, laughter rumbling in a chest pressed against her ear. "Daddy, look, I drawed you a picture." "Drew, sweetheart. You drew a picture." "Drew, I drew you." More laughter, being spun around until the world was just colors and joy and darkness. Sudden and complete. Rough hands, a voice she didn't know. "Get her in the car now." "Daddy, Daddy." Screaming, so much screaming. Hers, someone else's. A sting in her arm, chemical taste in her mouth. The world tilting, fading, going gray. Hannah came back to herself on the floor, gasping like she'd been underwater. The pendant was still clutched in her fist, cutting into her palm. Tears streamed down her face. When had she started crying? Her whole body shook, not from cold, from knowing, from remembering something that couldn't be real. "What the hell are you doing?" The voice cracked through the room like a whip. Hannah scrambled to her feet, pendant still in hand, and found herself face to face with Thomas Bennett. He stood in the doorway, frozen, staring at the box, at the scattered letters, at the pendant dangling from her trembling fingers. "I'm sorry," Hannah choked out. "I didn't mean to. I was just cleaning and I found... That's private." His voice was low, dangerous. "You had no right." "I know, I'm sorry, I'll put everything back." But Thomas wasn't looking at the box anymore. He was looking at her face, at the pendant in her hand, at the tears streaming down her cheeks. "Why are you crying?" he asked, and the anger had drained from his voice, replaced by something Hannah couldn't identify. "I don't know," she whispered, and it was the truth. She didn't know why touching that pendant had felt like being ripped apart, didn't know why she could almost, remember the smell of sawdust, and the sound of laughter, and the feeling of being safe. "I don't remember anything before I was 6 years old," Hannah heard herself say. The words tumbled out before she could stop them. "I woke up in an orphanage. No name, no family, nothing. Just gone. They told me I'd been found abandoned, but nobody knew where I came from, or who I was. They gave me a name, Hannah Carter, but it's not mine. It's not real. I've never known who I really am." Thomas took a step closer. His face had gone pale. "Where?" he asked hoarsely. "Where was the orphanage?" "Albuquerque St. Mary's Home for Children. 18 years ago." Hannah nodded, her throat too tight to speak. Thomas reached out slowly, like she might bolt, and took the pendant from her shaking hand. He held it up, and Hannah saw his eyes were wet. "This was Emily's," he said. "I gave it to her for her 5th birthday, 2 weeks before she was taken." The room felt too small, too hot. Hannah couldn't breathe. "Mr. Bennett." The resemblance. he continued almost to himself. It's not just the eyes, the way you tilt your head when you're thinking, the beauty mark. Emily had a scar on her left knee from falling off her bike. Do you? Hannah's hand moved automatically to her left knee. Through the fabric of her work pants, she could feel the raised line of scar tissue she'd had for as long as she could remember. No idea where it came from. Thomas saw the gesture, his breath hitched. This is insane, Hannah whispered. You can't possibly think. I don't know what to think. Thomas set the pendant down with shaking hands. But I need to know the truth. We both do. How? A DNA test. He looked at her with those tired, desperate eyes. Would you be willing to take a DNA test? Hannah's whole world narrowed to that one question. A DNA test. Scientific, definitive, no more wondering, no more empty spaces where her childhood should be, but also terrifying. Because what if the test said yes? What if Hannah Carter wasn't Hannah Carter at all? What if she was Emily Grace Bennett, and everything she thought she knew about herself was a lie? Yes, she heard herself say. Yes, I'll take the test. Thomas exhaled, like he'd been holding his breath for 18 years. Thank you, he said. I'll make the arrangements today. The results should take about 3 days. 3 days to find out if her entire life had been stolen from her. 3 days to discover if the emptiness inside her had a name. Hannah looked at the pendant on the table, at the letters from a mother she might have known, at the photograph of a little girl who might have been her, and she realized with stunning clarity that no matter what the test said, nothing would ever be the same again. Thomas picked up the photograph with gentle hands. Emily would be 23 now, he said softly. The same age as you. Hannah couldn't speak, could only nod. Outside, the rain finally stopped, but inside Bennett Mansion, the storm was just beginning. The DNA test took 15 minutes, a simple cheek swab in a sterile clinic downtown. A nurse with kind eyes telling Hannah to relax, and then it was done. 3 days until results. 72 hours to find out if her entire existence was built on someone else's tragedy. Thomas had insisted on driving her himself. The ride back to the mansion was quiet, heavy with unspoken questions. When he finally broke the silence, his voice was careful. I've hired someone, he said. A private investigator, Mark Evans. He's the best. Hannah stared out the window at the passing streets. To investigate me, to find answers. About the orphanage, about what happened 18 years ago, about... He trailed off, hands tight on the steering wheel. I need to know everything. So do I, Hannah whispered, when they pulled up to the mansion. A sleek black car was already parked in the circular driveway. A man in his early 40s stood beside it. Sharp suit, sharper eyes, the look of someone who'd seen too much and forgotten none of it. That's Mark, Thomas said. The investigator shook Hannah's hand with a firm grip. Miss Carter, I'll need to ask you some questions. If that's all right. Whatever helps. They talked for over an hour in Thomas's study. Mark took notes with quick, efficient strokes, his expression never changing as Hannah recounted the fragments she knew. Saint, Mary's orphanage, waking up with no memory, the years of searching for something she couldn't name. She told him about the nightmares she sometimes had, shadows and voices, and the feeling of falling. Told him about the scar on her knee, the beauty mark, the face in the mirror that had never quite felt like hers. When she finished, Mark closed his notebook. I'll start with the orphanage records, he said. See what I can dig up about how you got there. These things always leave a trail, even when people try to cover them up. How long will it take? Hard to say. Could be days, could be weeks. He glanced at Thomas. I'll have something for you before the DNA results come back. After Mark left, Hannah returned to work. Mrs. Morrison assigned her to the West Wing, guest rooms that hadn't been used in months. It felt safer there, away from Thomas's hopeful eyes and Lily's innocent questions. But safety didn't last long. She was changing sheets in the third bedroom when she heard voices in the hallway. A woman's voice, sharp and clipped. This is ridiculous. Thomas, you can't seriously believe this girl is Emily. Hannah froze, hands still gripping the pillowcase. The resemblance is undeniable, Karen. Thomas's voice strained. And she has no memory before age 6. The timeline matches. The timeline. Christ, you're letting grief make you stupid. Footsteps. High heels clicking on hardwood. She's a con artist. A cleaning lady who saw an opportunity and took it. This is exactly what these people do. We're doing a DNA test. A pause. Then, ice cold. You're what? Karen. Without consulting me. Without even telling me. The woman's voice rose. I'm your wife, Thomas. This affects Lily. This affects our family. And you're making decisions like I don't even exist. I was going to tell you. When? After you'd already welcomed some stranger into our home with open arms. After you'd gotten everyone's hopes up just to have them crushed again. Hannah's stomach churned. She shouldn't be listening to this. But she couldn't move. Couldn't make herself walk away. What if it's really her? Thomas said quietly. What if Emily's alive? Then we'll deal with it. But until we have proof, real proof, not just your desperate hope, this girl is nothing but an employee. Treat her like one. The footsteps retreated. A door slammed somewhere down the hall. Hannah stood there in the guest room, holding a pillowcase, and felt the first real stab of fear. Not fear of the truth. Fear of what would happen if the truth wasn't what Thomas wanted to hear. Or worse, fear of what would happen if it was. That night, the nightmares came back worse than ever. Running, always running. Little legs pumping, lungs burning. Someone chasing. Who? Can't see, can't stop. A hand grabbing her arm, yanking hard enough to hurt. A car door opening, being shoved inside. Chemical smell. Sweet and wrong. Darkness swallowing everything. Hannah woke up screaming. She sat in her apartment, drenched in sweat, shaking so hard her teeth chattered. 3:47 a.m. According to her phone, the fourth nightmare this week. She tried to piece it together like always. Tried to remember more than just flashes and feelings, but it was like trying to hold water. The harder she grasped, the faster it slipped away. By morning, exhausted and jittery, Hannah almost called in sick, but hiding wouldn't change anything. The test was already done. The investigation already started. All she could do was wait. Mrs. Morrison was waiting when Hannah arrived. Her thin lips pressed into a disapproving line. Mrs. Bennett would like to speak with you, she said. In the morning room now. Hannah's heart sank. Mrs. Bennett. The current Mrs. Bennett. Mrs. Morrison clarified. And there was something in her tone. Sympathy, warning, that made Hannah's skin prickle. The morning room was all windows and white furniture. Sunlight streaming in to illuminate a woman who looked like she'd stepped out of a magazine. Karen Bennett was maybe late 30s. Blonde. Beautiful in that sharp, polished way that probably took hours to maintain. She sat with perfect posture, coffee cup balanced in manicured hands. Hannah Carter, she said, not a question. Sit. Hannah sat. Karen studied her with eyes like blue ice. You've caused quite a disruption in my household. I didn't mean to, didn't you? Karen set down her cup with a soft click. Let me be clear. My husband is a good man, but he's been broken for 18 years. He sees Emily in every dark-haired girl, every almond-shaped eye. It's tragic, really. And people like you, she gestured vaguely at Hannah, prey on that. I'm not preying on anyone. No. Karen's smile was knife-sharp. You show up out of nowhere, conveniently looking like his dead daughter, conveniently with no memory, conveniently the exact right age, and now there's a DNA test and an investigator, and my husband actually has hope again. Do you know what happens when that hope gets crushed? Hannah's hands clenched in her lap. I didn't ask for any of this, didn't you? Or did you see an opportunity for a rich family and a tragic story and decide to audition for the role of lost heiress? That's not... My daughter, Karen interrupted, voice dropping to something dangerous, is the only child Thomas has now, the only one who matters, and I won't let some opportunistic stranger destroy what little stability we've built. Do you understand me? Hannah met her gaze. I understand you're scared. Karen's eyes flashed. Excuse me. You're scared the test will be positive. Scared I'm telling the truth, because that would change everything for you and Lily, wouldn't it? For a moment, real emotion cracked through Karen's perfect facade. Fury, fear, something darker underneath. Get out of my morning room, she said softly, and stay away from my daughter. Hannah stood on shaking legs. Lily came to me. I said stay away. If I see you talking to her again, you're fired, test results or not. Hannah left before she could say something she'd regret. Her whole body was trembling, with anger, with fear, with the sudden, overwhelming certainty that Karen Bennett had far more to lose than just her husband's attention. That afternoon, Lily found Hannah in the library anyway. You're sad again, the little girl observed, climbing onto the couch beside her. Did Mommy yell at you? Lily? She yells at lots of people. Daddy says it's because she's stressed. Lily swung her legs, not quite reaching the floor. But I think she's just mean sometimes. Hannah couldn't help but smile despite everything. You shouldn't say that about your mom. Why not? It's true. Lily tilted her head. She doesn't like it when Daddy talks about Emily. She gets this face. She scrunched up her features in an exaggerated scowl. Like this. Lily, I don't think... Do you think my daddy's wrong? Lily asked suddenly. About you being Emily. Hannah's breath caught. I don't know, sweetie. That's what the test is for. I hope you are, Lily said simply. I always wanted a big sister. And just like that, the weight on Hannah's chest got heavier, because if the test came back negative, she wouldn't just be disappointing Thomas. She'd be breaking this little girl's heart too. Don't get your hopes up, Hannah whispered. But Lily just smiled and took her hand. Outside, the sun was setting behind the mansion. 3 days until results. 3 days until everything changed, and somewhere in the shadows of Bennett Mansion, Hannah could feel Karen watching, waiting. 2 days before the DNA results were due, Karen cornered Hannah in the service hallway. Hannah had just finished vacuuming the second-floor study when she turned to find Karen blocking the doorway. No perfect smile this time, just cold calculation. We need to talk, Karen said. Privately, they ended up in a small sitting room off the main corridor, somewhere guests probably never saw. Karen closed the door with a soft click that sounded too much like a trap springing shut. I'll make this simple, Karen said, opening her designer purse. She pulled out an envelope, placed it on the coffee table between them. There's $50,000 in here, cash. Take it and disappear before the test results come back. Hannah stared at the envelope like it might bite her. You're trying to bribe me. I'm offering you a business arrangement. You walk away, tell Thomas you've had second thoughts, and you get enough money to start over somewhere else. Everyone wins. Except Thomas doesn't get answers. Thomas gets to keep his fantasy intact, Karen snapped. Better than having it shattered when you're exposed as a fraud. Hannah's hands clenched into fists. I'm not a fraud. Then you're delusional. Do you really think you're Emily Bennett? That by some miracle you survived 18 years and just happened to end up cleaning the house you were taken from? Karen laughed, sharp and bitter. Life doesn't work that way, sweetheart. You're a broke cleaning lady with a convenient memory gap and a passing resemblance to a dead girl, that's all. I never said I was Emily, Hannah shot back. Thomas is the one who asked for the test. I'm just looking for answers about my own past. Your past? Karen's eyes narrowed. Let me tell you about your past. You grew up in an orphanage because nobody wanted you. You bounced around foster homes, probably, making trouble until they sent you back. Now you're what? 23, with no education, no prospects, cleaning toilets for minimum wage. And then you saw an opportunity. Every word hit like a slap. Not because they were true, but because they were so close to Hannah's deepest fears about herself. Get out, Hannah whispered. Excuse me, I said get out. Hannah stood, voice shaking but firm. I don't want your money. I don't want anything from you except to be left alone to do my job. Karen's composure cracked. You stupid girl. Do you have any idea what you're doing? If that test comes back positive, if by some insane chance you are Emily, you destroy everything. Lily's inheritance, my position in this family, the life we've built, and for what? A father who couldn't even keep you safe the first time. The words hung in the air like poison. Hannah's voice came out deadly quiet. Thomas couldn't have known. That's not his fault, isn't it? Karen's smile was cruel now. He let a 5-year-old play in the front yard unsupervised. He was too busy with his business empire to watch his own daughter, and when she disappeared, he couldn't even find her. 18 years of searching, and nothing. What kind of father is that? The kind who never gave up, Hannah said. The kind who still has her room exactly as she left it, who keeps her picture everywhere. Who married me 4 years after his first wife died? Karen interrupted coldly. Who had another daughter and tried to forget? Don't romanticize his grief, Hannah. He moved on. He just likes to pretend he didn't. Hannah moved toward the door. I'm not having this conversation. Karen's hand shot out, grabbing her arm. Listen to me very carefully. Stay away from Lily. Stay away from Thomas. And when those test results come back negative, and they will, you pack your things and leave if you don't. I'll make sure every newspaper in the state knows about the con artist who preyed on a grieving father. I'll destroy you. Hannah jerked her arm free. You can't fire me. Thomas hired me. I can make your life hell until you quit. Karen's smile was poison sweet. Trust me, I'm very good at it. I'm not leaving, Hannah said, surprised by the steel in her own voice. Not until I know the truth. Threaten me all you want, but I'm not running. She walked out before Karen could respond, her heart hammering so hard she thought it might crack her ribs. That evening, Mark Evans returned to the mansion. Hannah was leaving for the day when Thomas called her into his study. Mark sat in one of the leather chairs, folder open on his lap, looking grim. Hannah, Thomas said, Mark's found something. I thought you should hear it. Hannah sat, her legs suddenly unsteady. What is it? Mark flipped through his notes. I tracked down records from St. Mary's orphanage. Most of them were destroyed in a fire 6 years ago, conveniently. But I found backup files at the county office, according to their intake logs. You were brought in on March 15th, 18 years ago. No name, no ID, heavily sedated. Hannah's mouth went dry. Sedated. The doctor's notes mentioned signs of chemical sedation, probably chloroform or something similar. You also had bruising on your arms, consistent with being grabbed or restrained, and you were running a fever, possibly from stress or trauma. Thomas had gone pale. Did anyone report how she got there? Anonymous drop-off. Someone left her at the door in the middle of the night, rang the bell, and disappeared. The orphanage called the police, but there were no missing persons reports matching her description. No leads. Eventually, they gave her a name and added her to the system. Jesus, Thomas whispered. There's more. Mark pulled out a photocopy of a bank statement. 3 days after Hannah was dropped off, St. Mary's received a $20,000 donation. Anonymous. No donor information. No strings attached. Just cash deposited directly into their account. Hannah felt sick. Someone paid them not to ask questions. That's my theory, Mark confirmed. I'm trying to trace the deposit, but it's been 18 years. Trail's cold. Whoever did this knew how to cover their tracks. Thomas stood abruptly, pacing to the window. Emily disappeared on March 12th, 3 days before Hannah was found. The dates aligned perfectly. Too perfectly. There's one more thing, Mark said carefully. I pulled traffic camera footage from the highway near Albuquerque around that time. It's grainy, but there's a van that passed through the checkpoint 3 times in the week leading up to Hannah's arrival. Same van was seen near the Bennett estate the day Emily was taken. Can you identify it? Thomas asked. Not yet, but I'm working on it. Mark closed his folder. Mr. Bennett, I have to be honest. This is looking less like a coincidence and more like a professional kidnapping. Someone took Emily, drugged her, dumped her at an orphanage far from home, and paid to keep it quiet. Why not just kill her? Thomas's voice broke on the words. Hannah flinched. I don't know, Mark admitted. Maybe they had a conscience. Maybe the plan changed. Maybe they thought erasing her memory and abandoning her was punishment enough. The room fell silent. Hannah's hands were shaking again. She pressed them flat against her knees, trying to steady herself. So what now? Now we wait for the DNA results, Thomas said. And if they're positive, we figure out who did this. And if they're negative, Thomas turned from the window, and the look in his eyes was devastating. Then I've spent 18 years hoping for a ghost, and you've spent your whole life wondering who you are. Either way, someone stole something from both of us. Hannah left the mansion that night with her head spinning. Anonymous drop-off, chemical sedation, bruises, a payment to keep quiet. Everything Mark had found pointed to the same conclusion. She hadn't been abandoned by neglectful parents or lost in some accident. She'd been taken, deliberately, professionally, and if the DNA test came back positive, It meant someone had looked at a 5-year-old girl and decided the best way to destroy her father was to make her disappear. Not kill her, just erase her. Make her forget who she was and leave her to grow up alone. Grow up. Confused. Empty. Hannah made it to her apartment before the tears came. She collapsed on her threadbare couch and cried. For the little girl in the white dress who'd been ripped from her father's arms. For the father who'd searched for 18 years. For herself and all the years she'd spent feeling like something was missing. Her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Stop digging. Last warning. Hannah stared at the message. Ice flooding her veins. Someone was watching. Someone who didn't want the truth to come out. She thought about Karen's cold eyes and cruel smile. Thought about the envelope full of cash and the threats. Then she deleted the text, turned off her phone, and made a decision. She wasn't running. Not from Karen. Not from whoever sent that message. Not from the truth. Tomorrow the DNA results would arrive. And whatever they said, Hannah was done hiding from her own past, even if it destroyed her. The waiting was worse than any nightmare. Hannah went through the motions at work. Dusting, mopping, polishing. But her mind was somewhere else entirely. Every time her phone buzzed, her heart stopped. Every time she heard footsteps in the hallway, she wondered if it was Thomas with news. The DNA results were due any day now. Maybe today. Maybe tomorrow. The clinic had said 3 to 5 business days, and they were on day 4. The uncertainty was eating her alive. Mrs. Morrison seemed to sense something was off. She assigned Hannah to the quieter parts of the mansion, the library, the conservatory, places where she could work alone. Hannah was grateful. She couldn't handle small talk right now. Couldn't pretend everything was normal when her entire identity hung in the balance. On the second day of waiting, Karen tried again. Hannah was reorganizing books in the library when Karen appeared in the doorway, perfectly composed as always. But there was something different in her eyes today. Something desperate. "I'll double it," Karen said without preamble. $100,000. Cash. You leave tonight. Hannah didn't even turn around. No. 200,000. Now Hannah did turn. There's not enough money in the world, Mrs. Bennett. Karen's mask slipped. For just a moment, Hannah saw real fear in those blue eyes. You're making a terrible mistake. Maybe, but it's mine to make. You have no idea what you're walking into, Karen hissed. This family has secrets, dark ones, things that would destroy you if you knew. Hannah's pulse quickened. Is that a threat? It's a warning. Karen stepped closer. Thomas isn't the saint you think he is. His first wife didn't just die of a broken heart. Karen stopped herself, something calculating crossing her face. Ask him about Evelyn sometime. Ask him what really happened. Before Hannah could respond, Karen turned and walked away, heels clicking on marble. Hannah stood there, book still in hand, mind racing. What had Karen been about to say about Thomas's first wife? That night, the nightmares returned with a vengeance. But this time, they were different, clearer. She was 5 years old, playing in the front yard. The grass was soft under her bare feet. Daddy was in his workshop. She could hear the saw buzzing. Mommy was inside making lunch. A car pulled up, dark blue. A man got out, smiling. Hey there. Sweetie, your daddy asked me to pick you up. I'm not supposed to go with strangers. Smart girl, but I'm not a stranger, see? He held up something. A picture. A badge. She couldn't quite make it out in the memory. Your daddy sent me. It's a surprise. She shouldn't. She knew she shouldn't, but the man seemed nice. And Daddy did like surprises. Getting into the car, the door closing, the man's smile vanishing. Good girl! Now this won't hurt much. A cloth over her face, sweet chemical smell. Panic. Screaming. Hannah woke up choking on her own scream. Tangled in sweat-soaked sheets, 3:15 a.m. Her whole body shook. But this time, she'd seen more. The man's face. She could almost picture it. Round features, dark hair, ordinary. The kind of face you'd forget in a crowd, except she hadn't forgotten. Somewhere deep in her traumatized brain, she'd held on to that memory for 18 years. She grabbed her phone and typed out a text to Mark Evans. I'm starting to remember. The man who took me. I can almost see his face. The response came surprisingly fast for the middle of the night. Don't force it. Memories under trauma can be unreliable. We'll talk tomorrow. Hannah couldn't go back to sleep. She sat at her tiny kitchen table, drinking coffee as the sun came up, trying to sketch the man's face from memory. Round jaw, maybe 40. Dark eyes, a scar? No, not a scar. A mole. Something on his left cheek. It wasn't much, but it was more than she'd had yesterday. Day 3 of waiting brought an unexpected ally. Hannah was cleaning the second-floor bathroom when she heard crying. She followed the sound to Lily's room and found the little girl curled up on her bed, tears streaming down her face. Lily, what's wrong? Lily looked up, eyes red. Mommy and Daddy are fighting. Really bad. Hannah's stomach tightened. About what? About you, Lily hiccuped. Mommy's saying mean things. She said you're trying to steal Daddy away. She said, if you turn out to be Emily, she's going to... The girl stopped, fresh tears spilling over. Going to what? I don't know. She saw me listening and sent me to my room. Lily grabbed Hannah's hand. Are you really my sister? Is the test going to say yes? Hannah sat on the edge of the bed. I don't know, sweetie. We have to wait for the results. I heard Daddy tell Uncle Mark that if you're Emily, Mommy might have to leave. Is that true? Hannah's blood ran cold. Thomas and Mark had discussed Karen leaving. That would explain the desperation, the bribes, the threats. Lily, I need you to tell me something, Hannah said carefully. Has your mom ever talked about Emily before? Before I showed up? Lily wiped her nose. Sometimes she told Daddy to take down all the pictures because they made her uncomfortable. She said living with a ghost wasn't healthy. The girl looked up with those innocent blue eyes. But Daddy said Emily wasn't a ghost. He said she was still out there somewhere and he'd never stop looking. Did that make your mom angry? Yeah, she gets really angry when Daddy talks about Emily. Lily's voice dropped to a whisper. Once I heard her tell Uncle Rick that she wished Emily had never existed, that everything would be easier if Daddy could just forget. Uncle Rick. Hannah filed that away. Who's Uncle Rick? Mommy's brother. He visits sometimes, but Daddy doesn't like him. They always fight. Before Hannah could ask more, Karen's voice echoed down the hallway. Lily, where are you? Lily's eyes went wide with fear. Don't tell her I talked to you, please. I won't, Hannah promised. Go wash your face, I was never here. Lily scrambled to her bathroom. Hannah slipped out the back door of the room and made it to the service stairs, just as she heard Karen enter Lily's room. Her mind was racing. Karen's brother, Rick, visiting the house, fighting with Thomas, and Karen wishing Emily had never existed. She needed to tell Mark. She found Thomas instead. He was in the garden, standing in the rain without an umbrella, staring at nothing. He looked like he'd aged 10 years in 3 days. Mr. Bennett, he turned, and Hannah saw the exhaustion in his face. Hannah, you should go home, it's late. I need to ask you something. She stepped closer. Karen's brother, Rick. What can you tell me about him? Thomas's expression darkened. Why? Lily mentioned him, said you two don't get along. That's putting it mildly. Thomas ran a hand through his wet hair. Rick Evans is a parasite. He's been leeching off Karen for years. Gambling debts, failed business ventures, always asking for money. I've told Karen to cut him off, but she won't. Says he's family. Evans? Hannah's heart skipped. Like Mark Evans. No relation. Common name? Thomas studied her. Why are you asking about Rick? Hannah hesitated. Just something Lily said. It's probably nothing. But Thomas was looking at her differently now. Hannah, if you know something... His phone rang. He pulled it out, glanced at the screen, and went completely still. It's the clinic, he whispered. Time stopped. Thomas answered, voice hoarse. Yes, this is Thomas Bennett. A pause. Yes, she's here. You can tell us both. He put the phone on speaker with shaking hands. The doctor's voice came through, professional and clear. Mr. Bennett, Miss Carter, the DNA results are conclusive. Based on the samples provided, there is a 99.9% probability of a biological parent-child relationship between Thomas Bennett and Hannah Carter. Hannah's knees gave out. She sat down hard on the wet garden bench. You're certain? Thomas's voice cracked. Absolutely certain. Hannah Carter is biologically your daughter. There's no doubt. The phone slipped from Thomas's hand. falling into the grass. He stood there in the rain, staring at Hannah with tears streaming down his face. "Emily," he whispered. "Oh God, Emily." Hannah couldn't breathe, couldn't think. The world had just shifted on its axis. She wasn't Hannah Carter. She never had been. She was Emily Grace Bennett, the missing daughter, the stolen child, the girl in the white dress who'd been erased from her own life. Thomas collapsed to his knees in front of her, sobbing. "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry I didn't find you sooner. I looked everywhere. I never stopped looking. I'm so sorry." Hannah found herself holding him, this broken man who was her father, both of them crying in the rain, as 18 years of grief and loss and searching finally came to an end. "It's okay," she heard herself say. "I'm here now. I'm home." But even as she said it, through her tears and shock and overwhelming emotion, one thought cut through everything else. If she was Emily Bennett, that meant someone had stolen her, drugged her, erased her, left her to grow up alone. And somewhere, that someone was still out there, watching, waiting. Emily sat in Thomas's study, wrapped in a blanket that didn't stop her shivering. Not from cold, from shock. The DNA results lay on the desk between them. Official, typed, impossible to deny. 99.9% match. Father and daughter. Thomas hadn't stopped staring at her. Like if he blinked, she might disappear again. "I don't know what to call you," he said finally, voice raw. "Hannah or Emily? I don't know either." She pulled the blanket tighter. "I've been Hannah for 18 years, but that was never really me. Was it? You're my daughter. That's all that matters." Thomas leaned forward, hands clasped. "Whatever name you choose, whatever you decide, you're still Emily Grace Bennett. You always were." Mark Evans arrived 20 minutes later, summoned by Thomas's frantic call. He took one look at them, both red-eyed, stunned, and knew. "The results came back," he said, not a question. "Positive." Thomas handed him the papers. "She's Emily. It's really her." Mark read through the results with professional calm, but Emily saw his jaw tighten. "Then we're not dealing with a coincidence or a con. We're dealing with a crime, kidnapping, false imprisonment, possibly human trafficking. Can we prove who did it?" Emily asked. Her voice sounded strange to her own ears, stronger than Hannah's had been. "I'm working on it. The van I mentioned. I tracked it to a rental company in Albuquerque. The records from 18 years ago are sketchy, but I found something interesting." Mark pulled out his tablet, brought up a scan of an old rental agreement. The van was rented under a false name, but the credit card used was linked to a bank account in New Mexico. That account received regular deposits from... He stopped, eyes going to Thomas. "From where?" Thomas demanded. Mark hesitated. "From a shell corporation. I'm still tracing the ownership, but the timing is suspicious. Large deposits started 6 months before Emily disappeared. They continued for 2 years after, then stopped. Someone was planning this," Emily said. 6 months in advance. At least. This was professional, organized. Mark swiped to another screen. "And there's something else. I pulled phone records from the Bennett residence around the time of the kidnapping. In the weeks leading up to Emily's disappearance, there were multiple calls to and from an unlisted number. That number belongs to..." The study door burst open. Karen stood there, face flushed, eyes wild. "It's true. The test was positive." Thomas stood. "Karen, this isn't the time. Isn't the time." Her voice pitched high. "You find out the cleaning lady is your long-lost daughter and you don't even tell me. I had to hear it from Mrs. Morrison." "I was going to tell you," Thomas said, but there was steel in his voice now. "After I'd had time to process it myself." Karen's gaze swung to Emily, and the hatred there was undisguised. "This is insane. There has to be a mistake. DNA tests can be wrong. Not at 99.9%, Mark said quietly. "Then the samples were contaminated or she somehow faked it. There's no way." "Enough." Thomas's voice cracked like a whip. "Emily is my daughter. The test is conclusive. I won't hear another word against it." "Emily," Karen laughed, sharp and bitter. "She's been Hannah for 18 years, Thomas. She doesn't even remember being your daughter. For all you know, she's been brainwashed or..." "I remember some things," Emily interrupted. Her hands were shaking, but she made herself stand. I remember a man in a dark blue car. I remember getting in because he said my father sent him. I remember the cloth over my face and not being able to breathe. I remember waking up in a strange place with people I didn't know, and my whole life was just gone. The room fell silent. Karen's face had gone pale. That doesn't prove anything. It proves she was kidnapped, Mark said. And I'm going to find out by who. Karen's eyes darted between them, trapped, desperate. This is ridiculous. You're all acting like this is some miracle. But what if she's dangerous? What if whoever took her did something to her? She could be working with them. Get out. Thomas's voice was ice. Excuse me. I said get out of my study now. I'm your wife. And she's my daughter, Thomas roared. The sudden volume made them all flinch. My daughter who was stolen from me 18 years ago. My daughter who's been alive this whole time. Alone. With no family. No identity. No past. And you're standing here trying to discredit her. Because what? Because you're jealous. Because this disrupts your comfortable life. That's not fair. You're right. It's not fair. None of this is fair. But Emily is staying. She's family. And if you can't accept that, then we need to have a very different conversation about our marriage. Karen's mouth opened, closed. Her eyes glistened with tears that might have been real. You'd choose her over me, over Lily. I'd choose truth over lies, Thomas said quietly. Every time. Karen turned and fled. They heard her heels clicking down the hallway, then a door slamming somewhere in the house. Thomas sank back into his chair, suddenly looking exhausted. I'm sorry you had to see that. It's okay, Emily said, though her heart was racing. She's scared, I get it. She's hiding something, Mark said bluntly. I've been doing this long enough to know. The question is what? He pulled up another file on his tablet. Mr. Bennett, I need to ask you something sensitive. Karen's brother, Rick. How much do you know about him? Not much. He's been in and out of trouble most of his life. Why? Because the unlisted number I mentioned. The one that called your house repeatedly before Emily disappeared. It's registered to Richard Evans. Karen's brother. The air went out of the room. Emily's mind raced. Rick. Karen's brother. The man Lily said fought with Thomas. The man who'd been calling the house before she was taken. You think Rick was involved? Thomas's voice was dangerous now. I think it's worth investigating, but I need your permission to bring him in for questioning. If he's innocent, he'll cooperate. If he's guilty, do it, Thomas said immediately. I don't care who he is. I want answers. Mark nodded. I'll contact him tonight. Set up a meeting for tomorrow. I want to be there, Emily said. Both men looked at her. Emily, that might not be safe, Thomas started. If he's the one who took me, I need to see his face. I need to know. Her voice was steady now. Hannah would have been afraid. But Emily, the real Emily, was done being afraid. Please. Thomas studied her for a long moment, then nodded. All right. But Mark and I will be with you the entire time. Understood. Mark gathered his things. I'll make the calls. We'll meet here tomorrow at 2. And Mr. Bennett, you might want to keep Karen away from her brother until after we talk to him, if she warns him. She won't get the chance, Thomas said grimly. After Mark left, Thomas and Emily sat in silence for a while. The weight of everything hung between them. 18 lost years. A kidnapping. A family torn apart. And somehow, impossibly, beginning to heal. Can I ask you something? Emily said finally. Anything. Karen said I should ask you about Evelyn. About what really happened to her. Thomas's face went gray. She said that. Emily nodded. He was quiet for so long she thought he wouldn't answer. Then, your mother, Evelyn. She didn't just die of a broken heart. She killed herself. Emily's breath caught. 6 months after you disappeared, Thomas continued, voice hollow. She couldn't handle the grief, the not knowing. She left a note saying she was going to find you, that she'd see you again soon. His hands trembled. I found her in the bathtub. She'd taken pills. Oh, God, Emily whispered. I never told anyone the truth. Couldn't bear the judgment, the questions. So I let people believe she died of grief, which was true, in a way. He looked at Emily with devastated eyes. I lost you both, my whole family, gone in 1 year. Emily crossed to him, knelt beside his chair, took his hands. I'm here now. We can't change what happened, but we can move forward, together. Thomas pulled her into a fierce hug, and they stayed that way for a long time. Two broken pieces of the same family trying to fit back together after 18 years apart. Outside. Night fell over Bennett Mansion, and in her room, Karen made a phone call. "Rick," she hissed when he answered. "We have a problem. They know. The investigator knows about the calls. You need to leave tonight." But it was already too late. Mark Evans was already on his way to Rick's apartment. Police in tow. The truth was coming, and no one could stop it now. Mark Evans didn't wait until morning. By 9 p.m., he was standing outside Rick Evans's apartment with 2 police detectives and a warrant. The building was run down, the kind of place where nobody asked questions and everybody minded their own business. "Police, open up." No answer. Mark nodded to the officers. One of them used a battering ram on the door. The apartment was empty, clothes scattered, drawers yanked open, a suitcase missing from the closet. Rick had run. He got tipped off, Detective Santos said, holstering her weapon. Someone warned him. Mark pulled out his phone and called Thomas. "He's gone. Cleared out maybe an hour ago." On the other end, Thomas's voice was tight with fury. "Karen? Probably. But running makes him look guilty. I'll put out a bolo. He won't get far." Mark hung up and started searching the apartment methodically. Most people running in a panic left something behind. A clue. A thread to pull. He found it under the bed. An old shoebox stuffed with papers. Bank statements. 18 years old. Showing deposits of $10,000, then $20,000, then $50,000. All from the same shell corporation Mark had been tracing. And at the bottom, a photograph. Emily Bennett, age 5, playing in a yard, taken from a distance, like surveillance. "Son of a bitch," Mark whispered. He bagged the evidence and headed back to Bennett Mansion. This wasn't just coincidence or circumstantial anymore. This was proof. Karen was waiting in the foyer when Mark arrived. "Where is he?" she demanded. "Where's my brother?" "Gone," Mark said coldly. But he left plenty behind, including evidence that he was stalking Emily before the kidnapping. "Care to explain that?" Karen's face went white. "I don't know what you're talking about." "Really? Because the bank statements in his apartment show payments that match exactly with the deposits made to St. Mary's Orphanage, and the timing lines up perfectly with Emily's disappearance. That doesn't mean anything. It means your brother was paid to kidnap a 5-year-old girl," Mark said, voice hard. "The question is, who paid him? And did you know?" "I want a lawyer," Karen said immediately. "That's your right. But I should tell you, the police are very interested in talking to you, especially since you warned Rick to run. That makes you an accessory after the fact." Thomas appeared at the top of the stairs. Emily beside him. "Tell them the truth, Karen. For once in your life, tell the goddamn truth." Karen looked up at them, trapped. Her perfect composure was cracking piece by piece. "I didn't know," she said finally. "Not until later. Not until after we were married." "Didn't know what?" Thomas descended the stairs slowly, each step deliberate. "Rick told me 2 years into our marriage. He was drunk, feeling guilty. He said he'd done something terrible for money, something he could never take back." Karen's voice shook. "He told me about the little girl, about the kidnapping. And I realized," she looked at Emily, "I realized it was you, Emily." The room went deadly silent. "You knew," Emily whispered. "You knew what happened to me and you said nothing. What was I supposed to do?" Karen's tears were real now. "Turn in my own brother. Destroy my marriage. I was already pregnant with Lily by then. I had to protect my family. I was your family," Thomas said, voice breaking. "Emily was your stepdaughter, and you let her stay lost. You let me search for years, spend millions on investigators, tear myself apart with guilt, and you knew where she was the whole time." "I didn't know where she was," Karen protested. "Rick never told me that part. He just said he'd taken her somewhere far away and she'd never be found, I thought. I thought she was dead. I thought telling you would only make it worse." "Liar," Mark said flatly. The payments to Rick didn't stop after 2 years. They continued for 8 more years. Someone was paying him to stay quiet, and I'm betting it was you. Karen's silence was admission enough. Thomas looked at her like he'd never seen her before. Who ordered it? Who paid Rick to take Emily in the first place? I don't know. Tell me. Karen flinched. I don't know. Rick never said. He just told me someone approached him, offered him a fortune to make Emily disappear. He needed the money, gambling debts, loan sharks threatening to kill him. So he took the job. And you paid him to keep quiet about it. Mark pressed. Use Thomas's money to protect your brother and your position in this family. I was protecting Lily, Karen screamed. If the truth came out, she'd lose everything. Her father, her home, her inheritance. I did what any mother would do. Any mother. Emily's voice was ice. Any mother would turn in a child kidnapper. Any mother would tell the truth. You're not protecting Lily. You're protecting yourself. Thomas pulled out his phone. I'm calling the police. Wait, Thomas, please. Karen grabbed his arm. I'm sorry, I'm so sorry. I made terrible choices, but I can help now. I can get Rick to talk. I know where he might go. Save it for your lawyer, Thomas said, shaking her off. You're done here, Karen. Done in this house. Done in this family. As soon as the police are finished with you, I want you gone. You can't just throw me out. Watch me. Thomas's eyes were cold. You helped cover up my daughter's kidnapping. You used my money to pay off the kidnapper. You lied to my face for years. You're lucky I'm not pressing charges myself. Detective Santos arrived with backup within 20 minutes. Karen was read her rights and taken in for questioning. The whole time, she kept looking back at Thomas, at Emily, as if expecting them to save her. Nobody did. After Karen was gone, Mrs. Morrison appeared, grim-faced and determined. Mr. Bennett, there's something I need to tell you, she said, about Mrs. Bennett, the current one. Thomas looked exhausted. What is it? I've worked in this house for 15 years. I was here when you married Karen, and I never trusted her. Mrs. Morrison glanced at Emily. The day Emily disappeared, the original Emily, I saw something. A car parked down the street. Same car that had been there for weeks. Different times of day. I reported it to the police, but they said it wasn't relevant. What kind of car? Mark asked sharply. Dark blue sedan. I never saw the driver clearly, but I saw him once talking on the phone, right before Emily was taken. She paused. A few months after you married Karen. I saw her brother Rick driving that same car. I'm certain of it. Mark and Thomas exchanged looks. Why didn't you say something? Thomas asked. I tried, but Mrs. Bennett, Karen, she told me I was mistaken, said Rick's car was gray, not blue. She made me doubt myself. Mrs. Morrison straightened. But I'm not mistaken. That was the same car. And Rick was watching this house for weeks before the kidnapping. Did you see anyone with him? Mark asked. Once a woman. She stayed in the car, but I saw her hair. Blonde. Short. Mrs. Morrison's jaw tightened. Similar to how Karen wore her hair back then. The implication hung in the air like poison. Karen wasn't just covering for Rick, Emily said slowly. She was part of it. She helped plan the whole thing. Thomas sank into a chair, face in his hands. She wanted you gone, from the beginning, so she could have me to herself. She saw an opportunity, Mark agreed. Thomas Bennett, grieving widower, vulnerable. But there was a daughter in the way, an heir, so she had her brother remove the problem. And when Emily showed up 18 years later, Emily continued, voice shaking. Karen tried everything to make me disappear again. The bribes, the threats, the warnings. She knew if the truth came out, she'd lose everything. Mrs. Morrison nodded. I should have spoken up sooner. I'm sorry. It's not your fault, Thomas said. Karen was very good at hiding what she was. His phone rang. Detective Santos. Thomas put it on speaker. Yes. Mr. Bennett, we have Richard Evans in custody. Highway Patrol picked him up an hour outside the city and he's talking. The police station interrogation room smelled like stale coffee and desperation. Rick Evans sat hunched at the metal table, hands cuffed, looking 20 years older than his 45 years. His face was gaunt, his eyes hollow. A man who'd been running from his sins for nearly 2 decades and had finally been caught. Thomas. Emily and Mark watched through the one-way glass as Detective Santos began the interrogation. "Mr. Evans, you've waived your right to an attorney, is that correct?" Rick nodded. His voice came out hoarse. "I'm done running, I want this over." "Then let's start from the beginning," Santos said. "March 12th, 18 years ago, Emily Grace Bennett was kidnapped from her front yard. You were involved. Tell me what happened." Rick's hands shook. "Karen approached me 6 months before, said she'd met this guy, Thomas Bennett, rich, widowed, had a kid. She was going to marry him, but the kid was a problem." Emily's fingernails dug into her palms. Thomas had gone rigid beside her. "A problem how?" Santos asked. "The inheritance? Thomas's whole estate was set up to go to Emily if something happened to him," Karen said. "As long as Emily was around, she'd never really be his wife, just the second choice, the replacement for his dead wife and missing kid. So Karen hired you to kidnap Emily. She said, 'Remove her from the picture.' Those were her exact words. I was desperate, owed money to some dangerous people. She offered me $200,000, half up front, half after the job was done." Rick's voice cracked. "I told myself I wouldn't hurt her. Just take her somewhere far away, somewhere she'd be found eventually. But that's not what happened," Santos said. "No." Rick put his face in his hands. "I followed the family for weeks, learned their routine, knew when the kid played outside, when the parents were distracted. March 12th, I pulled up in a rental car, told Emily her dad sent me. She believed me. Got right in. In the observation room, Emily felt tears streaming down her face. Thomas gripped her hand so hard it hurt. I drove her to Albuquerque," Rick continued. "Gave her chloroform when she started to panic. By the time we got there, she was out cold. I dropped her at St. Mary's orphanage with $20,000 in cash and a note saying to keep quiet about where she came from." "Why an orphanage?" Santos asked. "Why not just kill her?" Rick looked up, and there were tears on his face too. "Because I'm not a murderer. I'm a bastard and a criminal, but I couldn't kill a 5-year-old kid. I thought if I left her somewhere safe, with no memory of who she was, it would be enough. Karen would get what she wanted, and Emily would have a chance at a life without her family," Santos said coldly. "Without her identity, without anything. I know it was wrong. I've lived with it every day for 18 years. Did Karen know where you took Emily?" Rick hesitated. "No, I never told her the specifics. Just said the job was done, and Emily wouldn't be found. Karen paid me the rest of the money and told me to disappear for a while. I left the state for 2 years. But the payments didn't stop," Santos said, sliding bank statements across the table. "You received money from Karen for 10 years after the kidnapping. Why?" "She was paying me to stay quiet every few years. When Thomas would launch a new investigation or hire new detectives, Karen would call me in a panic, make sure I hadn't left any traces, make sure I wouldn't talk. The payments were insurance. Did you ever consider coming forward telling the truth?" "Every day," Rick whispered. "But I was a coward, and Karen said if I talked, she'd make sure I went down for everything. She had proof I took the money, proof I rented the van, proof I was at the Bennett house that day. I'd be the only one blamed while she walked free." Detective Santos leaned forward. "Karen claims she didn't know about the kidnapping until 2 years into her marriage, that you confessed while drunk." Rick laughed bitterly. "That's bullshit. This was her plan from the start. She researched Thomas for months before they even met, found out about his first wife's death, about Emily, about the estate. She saw an opportunity and she took it. I was just the tool she used. Can you prove that? Check her emails from back then. She used an old account. I can give you the login. She kept everything, plans, timelines, research on orphanages, even drafts of what to tell Thomas if he ever suspected anything." Rick met Santos's eyes. "My sister is a lot of things, but stupid isn't one of them. She documented everything in case she ever needed leverage against me." Santos stood. "Wait here." She left the interrogation room and entered the observation area where Thomas, Emily, and Mark waited. "Did you get that?" she asked. "Every word," Mark said grimly. "If those emails exist, they'll prove premeditation, first-degree kidnapping, conspiracy, fraud. Karen's looking at serious prison time." Thomas's voice was hollow. She planned it from the beginning. Before we even met, this whole thing. Our marriage. Lily. Everything was built on her taking Emily away from me. I'm sorry, Santos said. I know this is hard. Hard. Thomas's laugh was broken. I married the woman who orchestrated my daughter's kidnapping. I gave her 10 years of my life. Had another child with her. Trusted her. His voice broke. How could I not see it? Emily squeezed his hand. She was good at hiding it. That's what predators do. Santos nodded. We have enough to arrest Karen now. We'll need Emily's testimony, and we'll need to verify Rick's claims about the emails. But this case is solid. What happens to Rick? Emily asked. He's confessed to kidnapping, false imprisonment, accepting payment for a felony. He'll serve significant time, but his cooperation will count for something. Santos looked at Emily with sympathy. I know this doesn't undo what happened to you. Nothing can. But we'll make sure they both pay for it. 24 hours later, Thomas called a family meeting in the Great Hall of Bennett Mansion. The staff were there. Mrs. Morrison, the housekeepers, the groundskeepers, Thomas's lawyers, Mark Evans, Detective Santos, and the media, carefully corralled outside with cameras rolling. Lily sat on the couch, confused and scared. Emily sat beside her, holding her hand. Thomas stood at the front of the room, looking like he'd aged a decade, but there was steel in his voice when he spoke. Thank you all for coming. I have an announcement to make, and I want to make it publicly so there's no confusion, no rumors, no doubt. He turned to Emily, held out his hand. She took it and stood beside him. This young woman, Thomas said, voice thick with emotion, is not my employee. She is not a stranger. She is not a coincidence. He pulled out the DNA results, held them up. This is my daughter, Emily Grace Bennett, taken from me 18 years ago and, by God's grace, returned to me now. A ripple went through the crowd. Cameras flashed outside. Lily gasped. The DNA test is conclusive, Thomas continued. 99.9% probability. There is no doubt. Emily was kidnapped as a child. Her memory erased, her identity stolen. She grew up alone in orphanages and foster care while I searched for her everywhere. He took a breath, steadying himself. My wife, Karen Bennett, and her brother Richard Evans have been arrested in connection with Emily's kidnapping. The evidence shows they planned and executed her abduction in order to secure my estate and eliminate competition for inheritance. Gasps. Shocked murmurs. Lily started crying. Emily knelt in front of her. I'm still your sister, she said softly. That doesn't change. None of this is your fault. Mommy did this, Lily sobbed. Mommy took you away. I'm so sorry, sweetheart, Thomas said, kneeling beside them. But yes, your mother made terrible choices. She hurt a lot of people. I want my mommy, Lily cried. I know, and you'll see her. But she won't be living here anymore. Thomas pulled both girls into a hug. But you have me and you have Emily. We're still a family. We'll get through this together. Emily held her little sister while Lily cried, feeling her own tears fall. This innocent child was as much a victim as anyone. None of this was Lily's fault. Thomas stood, addressing the room again. Emily Grace Bennett is my daughter and my heir. She will be taking her rightful place in this family and in my company. Anyone who has a problem with that can leave now. Silence. No one moved. Good. Thomas's voice softened. This family has been broken for too long. Today we start to heal. Outside, reporters shouted questions. Inside, Mrs. Morrison started crying and came forward to hug Emily. The other staff followed. People who'd known the original Emily, who'd mourned her, who'd held on to hope. Welcome home, Miss Emily, Mrs. Morrison whispered. Welcome home. Emily looked around the great hall, at the portrait of her 5-year-old self, at her father's tearful face, at Lily clinging to her, at the home that had always been hers but she'd never known. And for the first time in 18 years, the emptiness inside her started to fill. She was Emily Grace Bennett. She was home, and the people who'd stolen her childhood would pay for what they'd done. The trial lasted 3 weeks. Emily sat in the courtroom every single day, Thomas beside her, watching as the full scope of Karen's betrayal unfolded. The prosecutors presented everything: bank records, emails, Rick's testimony, the surveillance photos. The rental agreements, every piece of evidence pointed to the same devastating conclusion. Karen had orchestrated the entire kidnapping with cold, calculated precision. Rick took the stand first, his voice shaking as he recounted the details. How Karen had approached him with the plan, how she'd researched orphanages far from home, how she'd paid him in increments to ensure his silence. "I'm not asking for forgiveness," Rick said, looking directly at Emily. "What I did was unforgivable. I destroyed a child's life for money, but I'm telling the truth now because it's the only decent thing I've done in 18 years. Karen's defense tried to paint her as a victim, a woman who'd fallen in love and made terrible choices to protect her brother. But when the prosecutors presented the emails, that story fell apart. The emails were damning, written months before Karen ever met Thomas. They outlined her research on the Bennett family, her plans to remove obstacles, her calculations of how much the estate was worth. She'd even written to Rick, "The kid has to disappear completely. No body, no evidence, no trace. Can you handle that?" Emily felt sick reading them. This woman had looked at a 5-year-old child, her, and seen nothing but an obstacle to wealth and status. When Karen took the stand, she tried to maintain her composure, claimed the emails were taken out of context, insisted she'd loved Thomas, that the kidnapping had been Rick's idea, and she'd only found out later. But the prosecutor destroyed her testimony piece by piece. "Mrs. Bennett, this email dated January 15th, 6 months before you met Thomas, says, and I quote, 'Bennett is perfect, wealthy, vulnerable, has a kid who'll inherit everything, need to eliminate competition before I make my move.' How do you explain that?" I was just fantasizing. I didn't mean..." "And this email to your brother, dated February 3rd, says, 'Can you handle a removal job? $200K, kid, age 5, needs to vanish without trace.' That sounds pretty specific for a fantasy." Karen's composure cracked. "I was desperate. You don't understand what it's like to have nothing, to see a chance at a better life and know you'll never get another one. So you had a 5-year-old child kidnapped and abandoned. I didn't think..." Karen's voice broke. "I didn't think it would hurt her this much. I thought she'd be adopted, have a good life. You thought erasing a child's identity and leaving her in an underfunded orphanage was giving her a good life." Karen had no answer. The jury deliberated for 6 hours. Guilty on all counts. Conspiracy to commit kidnapping, first-degree kidnapping, child endangerment, fraud, 10 counts total. Rick pleaded guilty to avoid trial. His cooperation earned him a reduced sentence, but he still faced 15 to 20 years. Karen received 25 years to life. When the sentence was read, Karen looked back at Thomas one last time. Her face was streaked with tears, all pretense gone. "I did love you," she said. That part was real. Thomas's expression didn't change. "No, it wasn't. You don't destroy what you love." Guards led her away. Emily watched her go and felt nothing. No satisfaction, no revenge, just a hollow sadness for all the years lost, all the damage done. "Is it over?" Lily asked softly. She'd insisted on being there for the sentencing, despite Thomas's protests. "Yes, sweetheart," Thomas said, pulling her close. "It's over." The weeks after the trial were strange, peaceful, but strange. Emily moved into her old room, the one Thomas had kept exactly as it was 18 years ago. She'd expected it to feel wrong, like living in a museum, but instead, it felt like coming home to a place she'd always belonged. She changed things slowly, took down the little girl decorations, repainted the walls, brought in furniture that reflected who she was now. But she kept some things: the white dresser with the flower handles, the window seat where she'd apparently loved to read, the star-shaped nightlight that Thomas said had been her favorite. "You'd make me leave it on all night," he told her one evening as they stood in the doorway together. Said the stars kept the monsters away. Emily smiled. "Smart kid. The smartest." Thomas's voice was thick. "I'm sorry I couldn't protect you from the real monsters." "You didn't know. None of us did." Emily took his hand. "But we know now, and they can't hurt us anymore." Lily adjusted better than anyone expected. She'd been devastated about Karen at first, crying herself to sleep for weeks. But slowly, with therapy and patience and Emily's constant presence, she started to heal. "Is it okay that I still love Mommy sometimes?" Lily asked Emily one night as they made cookies together. A new tradition they'd started. Of course it is, Emily said. She's still your mom. You're allowed to have complicated feelings. But she did bad things. Yes, she did very bad things. But that doesn't mean you're bad for loving her. It just means love is complicated. Lily thought about that, rolling dough between her small hands. Do you hate her? Emily considered. No, I feel sorry for her. She wanted something so badly that she was willing to hurt people to get it. That's sad. You're nice, Lily said. Nicer than me. I'm still kind of mad at her. You're allowed to be mad. Too. Emily bumped her shoulder gently. All your feelings are valid, okay? Even the confusing ones. Lily smiled and went back to the cookies. Thomas threw himself into making things right. He established the Emily Grace Foundation, a nonprofit dedicated to finding missing children and supporting families affected by kidnapping. He donated millions to update Amber Alert systems, fund private investigators for cold cases, and provide therapy for recovered victims. I couldn't save you the first time, he told Emily, but maybe we can save other families from going through what we did. Emily became the foundation's spokesperson. She gave interviews, told her story, put a face to the statistics. It was hard, reliving the trauma over and over, but it felt important, meaningful. If my story helps even one kid get found, she said in a national television interview, then 18 years of pain will have meant something. The response was overwhelming. Letters poured in from families with missing children, from other kidnapping victims, from people who just wanted to say they were inspired. Emily read every single one. One letter in particular made her cry. It was from a woman whose daughter had been missing for 10 years. Your story gave me hope for the first time in years, it read. I'd started to believe she was gone forever, but if you came home after 18 years, maybe my baby can too. Thank you for not giving up. Thank you for showing us that miracles can happen. Emily kept that letter in her desk drawer, pulled it out whenever the nightmares got bad, whenever the weight of everything felt too heavy. She wasn't just Emily Bennett anymore, not just Hannah Carter. She was something new, someone forged from tragedy but not defined by it. 6 months after the trial, Thomas called Emily into his study. I've been thinking, he said, about the future, about the company. Bennett Industries was a massive manufacturing empire worth billions. Thomas had run it alone for years, but he was getting older, tired. I want you to learn the business, he said. Not because you have to. You can do whatever you want with your life. Go to college, travel, anything. But if you're interested, I'd like to teach you. Eventually, I'd like you to take over. Emily's heart raced. Me, Thomas, I barely graduated high school. I don't know anything about running a company. Neither did I when I started. But you're smart, resilient, and you care about people. That's more important than any MBA. He smiled. Besides, you're a Bennett. It's in your blood. Emily thought about it. Thought about the years she'd spent cleaning houses, taking orders, invisible. And now she had a chance to build something, to matter. Okay, she said. I'm in. Thomas's smile was brighter than she'd seen in months. Then we start Monday, that night. Emily stood in the great hall where everything had changed. The portrait of her 5-year-old self still hung there, but now there was another photo beside it, one taken last week. Emily, Thomas, and Lily, arms around each other, smiling. 2 families, 2 lifetimes, 1 story. Emily touched the pendant around her neck, the one with the E that had started everything. She'd worn it every day since Thomas gave it back to her. I'm home, she whispered to the little girl in the portrait. We made it home. And for the first time in 18 years, Emily Grace Bennett felt whole. 6 months had passed since the trial ended. Emily stood in the kitchen of Bennett Mansion. Her home now, truly, with Flower dusting her nose and Lily giggling beside her. They were making chocolate chip cookies, the kitchen filled with the warm smell of butter and sugar, and something that felt surprisingly like normal family life. You got flour everywhere, Lily laughed, pointing at the counter. That's because someone, Emily booped Lily's nose, leaving a white mark, keeps throwing it around. It was an accident. Sure it was. Emily grinned and handed her the mixing spoon. Here you stir and try not to fling dough on the ceiling this time. That was one time, Lily protested, but she was smiling. The kitchen door swung open and Thomas walked in, loosening his tie. He stopped, taking in the scene, the messy counter, the girls laughing, the cookies on the baking sheet, and his whole face softened. "Something smells amazing," he said. "Daddy," Lily ran to him. "We're making your favorite, the ones with extra chocolate chips." "My favorite, huh?" Thomas picked her up. Even though she was getting too big for it. "You two are spoiling me. You deserve it," Emily said, sliding the tray into the oven. "You've been working 12-hour days all week. Someone has to keep Bennett Industries running while I train my successor." He set Lily down and smiled at Emily. "Speaking of which, the board meeting went well. They're impressed with your presentation on the new sustainability initiative." Emily felt her cheeks warm. She'd been working at Bennett Industries for 4 months now, learning everything from manufacturing processes to corporate finance. It was overwhelming sometimes, going from cleaning houses to running board meetings, but Thomas was patient, and she was learning fast. "They asked when you'll be ready to take on a VP position," Thomas continued. "VP already?" Emily's eyes widened. "You've earned it. You're a natural leader, Emily. The employees respect you, the clients trust you, and you actually care about the impact we make. That's rare." Lily tugged on Emily's sleeve. "What's a VP?" "Vice President," Emily explained. "It means I'd help run part of the company." "Oh," Lily considered this. "Will you still have time to make cookies with me?" Emily knelt down to her level. "Always, I promise. No job is more important than being your sister." Lily threw her arms around her neck. "Good, because you're the best sister ever." Emily held her tight, blinking back sudden tears. This was what had been stolen from her 18 years ago. This warmth, this belonging, this family. But she had it back now, and she'd never take it for granted again. After cookies and milk and getting Lily settled in bed, Emily and Thomas sat in the study. It had become their ritual. End of the day, just the two of them, talking about everything and nothing. "I got a letter today," Emily said, pulling an envelope from her bag. "From the Department of Corrections." Thomas tensed. "Karen," Emily nodded. "She wants to see me. Says she has things she needs to say before it's too late." Karen had been diagnosed with stage 3 breast cancer 2 months into her sentence. The prognosis wasn't good. She'd likely serve less than 5 years of her 25-year sentence before the disease took her. "You don't have to go," Thomas said firmly. "You don't owe her anything." "I know, but..." Emily stared at the letter. "I keep thinking about Lily. Someday she's going to ask me about her mother, about what happened, and I want to be able to tell her that I tried, that I gave Karen a chance to explain, to apologize, to be something other than the villain in this story." "She is the villain in this story," Thomas said quietly. "I know, but she's also Lily's mother, and dying. And maybe there's something she needs to say that I need to hear." Thomas was quiet for a long moment. Then, "Do you want me to come with you?" "No, this is something I need to do alone." The women's correctional facility was exactly as depressing as Emily expected. Gray walls, harsh lighting, the smell of industrial cleaner and despair. She sat in the visitation room, hands folded on the metal table, waiting. When Karen walked in, Emily barely recognized her. The cancer had ravaged her. The blonde hair was gone, replaced by a prison-issued headscarf. She'd lost at least 30 pounds. Her skin had a grayish tint, and she moved like every step hurt. But her eyes, those cold blue eyes, were the same. They sat across from each other in silence for a moment. Then Karen spoke, her voice hoarse. "Thank you for coming. I wasn't sure you would. I almost didn't. But you're here." Karen's smile was bitter. "Always were too good for your own good, weren't you? Even as a kid." Emily blinked. "You remember me? From when I was 5? I remember everything." Karen folded her skeletal hands. "I remember watching you play in the yard. So happy, so loved. I remember thinking you had everything I'd ever wanted. A father who adored you. A beautiful home. A future. And I hated you for it." The words should have hurt. Instead, Emily just felt sad. "You were a child," she said. "I was 5 years old. I know how sick that sounds, but I spent my whole life with nothing. Abusive parents, poverty, men who used me and threw me away. And then I saw Thomas, saw what his life was like, and I wanted it so badly I could taste it. Karen's eyes glistened, so I took it. I removed the obstacle, and I took what I wanted. You destroyed lives, Emily said quietly. Mine, Thomas's, your own brother's, even Lily's. Was it worth it? Karen was silent. Then, so softly Emily almost didn't hear, no. Then why did you do it? Because I didn't think about consequences. I only thought about what I wanted in that moment. And by the time I realized what I'd actually done, the child I'd traumatized, the family I'd destroyed, it was too late. I was in too deep. So I kept lying, kept pretending, kept trying to convince myself that I'd done what I had to do. Tears rolled down Karen's wasted cheeks. I'm dying, she said. The doctors say 6 months, maybe less. And all I can think about is Lily, about the fact that she's going to grow up knowing her mother was a monster, that I won't be there to explain, to apologize, to try to make her understand that I loved her even though I was terrible at showing it. Do you want me to tell her something? Emily asked. Tell her, Karen struggled. Tell her that I'm sorry, that she deserved better, that none of this was her fault, and tell her that the one good thing I did in my miserable life was bring her into the world. Emily nodded. I'll tell her. And Emily. Karen met her eyes. I'm sorry. I know it doesn't fix anything. I know it doesn't undo 18 years of pain. But I'm sorry for all of it. You deserve to grow up knowing who you were. And I took that from you. Yes, Emily said. You did. And I'll never get those years back. But I'm not going to let what you did define the rest of my life. I'm home now. I have my father, my sister, my identity. You tried to erase me, and you failed. Karen smiled through her tears. You're stronger than I ever was. I had to be. You made sure of that. They sat in silence until the guard announced time was up. As Emily stood to leave, Karen called out one last time. Take care of Lily, please. Don't let her hate me so much that she can't see the good things in life. I won't, Emily promised. I'll make sure she knows love. Real love. The kind that doesn't destroy. Emily drove home in the fading afternoon light. Windows down, letting the wind clear her head. The meeting with Karen had been painful but necessary. Now she could close that chapter, move forward. When she pulled up to Bennett Mansion, the sun was setting, painting everything gold and warm. Through the windows, she could see Thomas and Lily in the sitting room, playing a board game. Her family, her home. Emily walked inside to the smell of the cookies they'd made earlier. Mrs. Morrison had plated them and left them on the kitchen counter with a note. For my favorite girls. She grabbed a cookie and headed to the great hall, where the portraits hung. 2 photos now, side by side. 5-year-old Emily in her white dress, shy and sweet, and the new family photo, Emily, Thomas, and Lily, all smiling. All together, between them hung something new, the pendant with the E, preserved in a shadow box, a symbol of everything lost and everything found. Emily touched the glass gently. We made it, she whispered. All of us. Thomas appeared beside her, Lily on his hip. You okay? He asked softly. Yeah, Emily smiled. I really am. Good. He wrapped his free arm around her shoulders. Because we have a family game night to finish, and Lily's winning, which means someone needs to help me cheat. Daddy, Lily giggled. You can't cheat. Can I? Thomas winked at Emily. What do you think, Em? Should we let her win? Emily looked at them, her father and her sister, and felt her heart fill to bursting. Always, she said. Let's always let her win. They walked back to the sitting room together, laughing, arguing about game rules, being a family. Outside, the sun finished setting. The mansion that had been a mausoleum of grief for so long was alive again, full of light and laughter and love. The past didn't hurt anymore. Hannah Carter had found her way home and became Emily Grace Bennett again. And in the end, that was all that mattered. The darkness had passed. Only light remained.